So I'm here with...
Napoleon Ryan.
So Napoleon, you're in episode 2.
I am indeed. I suppose I'm the new villain, if I am a villain. I don't know, I'm British. So I suppose I must be by default a villain.
That is the safest character nowadays. So the British person is always the evil genius.
Oh yes. Yeah, I'm definitely the evil genius. I'm manipulating my family and kin to try and get Courage New Hampshire under my palm of my hand.
So tell us about your character in The Sons of Liberty.
Yes, well, I play Governor John Wentworth, and Governor John Wentworth, he's the colonial governor of New Hampshire in the 1770s. He's a real character, and he was about 35 when the everything started to kick off in the colonies, as we still call it in Britain sometimes. And essentially, following on from the first episode, I'm not very pleased with my local agents who've been working in the field. And I call them to account and I say, look, we need to go a bit more softly if we're going to take control of the situation. We don't want this Boston radicalism to spread. So we've got to play things very softly. We've got to use money. We've got to use power, influence, bribery, the softer arts of diplomacy, rather than coming in full guns blazing. We've got to be very diplomatic.
Well, and this is a real character like John Adams or Darth Vader. And so, was Darth Vader? Okay. But how did you... So how did you... I'm sure you did like a little bit of character research. What was the most interesting thing that you found out about this real person?
Well, I think the thing that really... The first thing I found very interesting about him, I mean, he grew up in America, but then he went to Britain and he studied there, and obviously he consorted with many of his peers of the time in London and Westminster. And then he came back and was colonial governor. But I think the most interesting thing was he actually, although I suppose I may come across slightly as an evil genius, he actually was very agreeable as a character. And, he didn't really suffer terrible fallout from the War of Independence. I mean, obviously, he had to go. But eventually, he survived the whole thing. And he actually ended up as a governor in Canada. I think it was New Brunswick.
Okay.
In the early 19th century, he was still around about 40 years later. He was still a governor there, so he was still kind of loyal to the king, and he was still very useful to the royal family and the government in Britain. But obviously, he had to move out of America because politically, it was expedient to do so.
Being English,
yeah.
Did this work kind of give you a little more of a connection to the American Revolution and give you some further insight that maybe you didn't have just from school or casual reading?
Well, it's terrible. I actually have a degree in history. That is my what I studied at university, but I kind of ignored American history. I was a medieval historian. So I studied everything from the fall of Rome, the rise of Islam, until the Renaissance. That was my kind of field. So I kind of missed America because that came afterwards. So for me it was very interesting to actually do, because I love history anyway, and I've always wanted to be in a period drama, but for some reason I've somehow managed to avoid that. I've done much more comedy. So
that's good, it's good.
So, yeah, it's kind of nice to do something different.
Now, there's cultural differences between England and America. Do you think that a piece like this would a British audiences would be interested in seeing a piece like this?
Oh, definitely. There's a huge heritage market in Britain for, I think, all forms of history. And I think it is something that we don't really get to see over in Britain. I mean, probably it's not really taught as one of Britain's finest hours as regards our historical story. Because obviously, George III lost the colonies. I mean, I don't think we have any hang-ups about that anymore. But I think the thing for us in Britain is that we do find that often we are portrayed very much as default villains. We're kind of safe villains for Hollywood because obviously, the British, they were bad. And the Nazis, again, it's very easy to have them as
villains. Or it's default intelligence.
Well, maybe. We're supposedly much more intelligent, which I don't know if that's true, but it's very nice to have people think
it's in the voice. I mean, I grew up in the South, so we're default, kind of silly.
Default courteous, default sort of more civilized, perhaps.
Oh, that's good. That gets you.
Humble New Yorkers,
that gets you points.
Fighting Yanks that who come down and very aggressively sort of trading on Wall Street,
So family friendly, No,
Yeah.
are you any nudity in the scene for you?
They cut all my nudity out, unfortunately, so you won't get to see me swimming naked in any rivers. But no, it's very family friendly, and I think it's very interesting. It's very educational, and I think the great thing about this particular project is very often when you see some sort of historical reenactment of a period in history, you see the great men. For example, Braveheart, you see William Wallace, or you see the Kings. And this is quite interesting because you actually see a microcosm of, a very small village. You see how ordinary people are affected by the events. And obviously I come in as perhaps a link to the outer world, beyond the village, as a kind of link to Britain and as a more of a sense of international perspective. But it's kind of interesting seeing how these 18th century Americans, these early, I suppose, new state Americans are, feeling their way towards the different values that underpin modern America.
Well, Napoleon, it's great to talk to you. It's great to interview somebody that isn't 6 feet tall, because I'm down here, and it's
I know how you feel. It's land of the giants.
I know what's going on. Well, great. Thanks. I'm going to shake your hand again. All right, great finale.
Thanks. You.